Hello, everyone.
Hey there, guys. This is Rita.
This is Amanda, and you're listening to
I Don't Know Her,
the podcast where we talk about women you've probably never heard of, but you should have, and now you will.
Yeah.
So Rita's going to tell me a story, and I'm very excited. I told her she had to wait and not tell me anything about it until we started recording, so I have a natural reaction.
Well, it happened to me a lot last night, but it happens, I'd say daily at work, where I just I feel like women don't believe other women. So like I'll be, and I mean, it's of any age, it's any woman. It's happened in a range of ages and everybody. I'll be like, they're like, so is this spicy? And I'm like, no, actually, we use peppers here more for flavor, less hot ones like guajillos and pasillas, not really bright and spicy ones like jalapenos or serranos, and if we do, they're sparingly and we can omit them. And they look at you like, I don't believe that it's not spicy. And they kind of like take a minute or something. And one of my coworkers, or we kind of do this to each other too. Like if people have questions on the menu, we'll both kind of answer because we both have information and stuff. Or my boss will come up and do the same thing. But it always tends to be a male coworker or one of the male owners that they're like, oh yeah, we don't use spicy peppers. And then they're like, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden they believe them and then they continue to talk to him. And then I am no longer part of the conversation. So a lot of time I just walk away because then they're just like, well, what's good here? And they look at him. Yeah. And a lot of times, like I have extensive beer knowledge. I don't know everything, but I know more than the average bear. And my coworker doesn't know anything about beer. And the guys will come up and they're like, oh, a woman will come up and what beer is good? And he's like, actually, she knows quite a bit about beer. And they're like, well, what do you like to drink? And they continue to speak to him.
That's so weird.
Yeah. Or yeah, they'll be like, well, what wine do you recommend? And he's like, the red one. And I'm like, so do you like more of like a Syrah heavy or I've got something that's more like on the lines of a Malbec? And they just look at you like, oh, like surprised that I actually know things. I don't know if this makes any sense, but it happens a lot.
I find that definitely I know exactly what you're talking about when it comes to beer, because having had a business in the beer industry, which is male dominated, I experienced that all the time, that people, especially men, but many women too, would make this assumption that I didn't actually know what I was talking about and would turn to a man to confirm what I had to say. And I was like, oh my God, I'm living in a world where I want to blow everything up.
Well, I guess the reason I'm pointing out that it was what I notice is mostly women is because I expect that from most men. It's just kind of how things go. They just like, oh, little girl, you don't know what you're talking about. But like from other women, I thought like, hey, I thought we had something, in common.
I think that the mistake there is that like every woman, grew up in the same society as those men did. And so they're influenced by the same messages. And it takes a lot to say, no, that message actually isn't true. I'm going to listen to my own truth. And a lot of women just don't ever do that work. And that's obviously frustrating, but I find it to be true. I'll often encounter women who will toe what I consider the party line, like the patriarchy line. Well, I'm not one of those kinds of girls. I'm easy to get along with.
Whoa, what?
Or I'm not that kind of girl. I don't cling to my man. Like, girl, you are perpetuating a stereotype that is based in nothing.
Yeah.
Like, are there clingy women out there? Sure. Are there clingy men? Yes. Are there clingy trans folks and non-binary folks? Yes.
Absolutely.
That's a personality trait, not a gender trait. Not a sexual trait. That is just a trait of some personalities. And there's just so much that we get inundated with that tells us that women are this and men are that. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
Yeah.
To pull out that old one.
I've also noticed too, as being a server, that women are, I shouldn't say all of them. I don't want to do that. Most of my interactions that happened last night, they were very rude and very sharp and like snippy. And I get it. Like I get that I have people at the worst moments in their life. They're hungry and they want to drink and they're tired. You know, I get them at dinner time. It's like, I understand you're not your best when you're hungry. I sure am not when I'm hungry. I get hangry.
Me too.
So I try to understand that people are not in their best mind frame. But then, like I said, the male coworker, the male owner comes up and then they just start laughing and everything's so good and everything's like all happy now. And I'm like, wait a minute. You were just like being a bitch to me. And now you're a totally different person in the span of a second. I don't understand that.
Do you think your race also plays into that?
Probably.
What's your gut feeling?
I don't, honestly, I would say I don't know. In what context would you mean?
I just wonder if sometimes those same people are more dismissive of you because you're also not white.
True.
So you've got two strikes against you, you know, in their like, you know, animal brains.
Yeah.
That you are not going to know enough because you're Latina or because you're a woman. And if you're both, good God. You know, and I do sometimes feel that way. And I also think there's a big stigma about body types too.
Yes.
That people who are like larger are dumb or something.
I actually have another coworker who is a little bit of a larger lady, and she absolutely said that. She says, I get this snidiness from customers and mainly women. And she's like, I feel like it's my size, that I'm not this small, little, dainty, pretty girl behind the bar. I'm a bigger person. And it was a line of sight that I had never seen. And I had never heard somebody else say. I was like, I had no idea.
I didn't realize how pervasive that was for a really long time. But this idea that people who are fat are dumb or lazy or whatever is so pervasive that it invades the interactions they have all day long. I am not somebody who's ever felt, you know, I've never had that interaction, but I had a best friend in high school who was a really overweight young woman. And I watched people, like if we were in a store, they wouldn't even speak to her. They would only speak to me, or they would slow down their cadence of speech to talk to her.
What?
I mean, it was outrageous.
Yikes.
You know, my friend was like 300 pounds. So she was very visibly overweight, right? Like when they looked at her, that's all they saw about her.
Yeah.
And it was really eye-opening to me. I was an anorexic at the time. So I weighed 98 pounds. Nobody ever made a comment about me looking ghastly.
Yeah.
Or that I had dark circles under my eyes, or that I clearly hadn't had nutrition in my body for months. No one mentioned it. In fact, I got the opposite often. Oh, you look so good. Oh my God, you're so skinny.
Yeah. I wish I was that skinny. Yeah.
I wouldn't trade my body today for that body ever, even though this body is currently going through a lot of other problems. But this body is healthy. This body has meat and sustenance and has the ability to move in ways that my old body couldn't have. I mean, I'm lucky I didn't break my bones. I'm lucky that my heart didn't give out, you know? And we have this perception in our society that being thin, being white, and being wealthy are somehow superior qualities that make you a better person, a smarter person, in any way, a more deserving person. And those are the kinds of things that I think you and I are on this show often trying to break away and show that those are not true. Those are just fallacies that have been perpetuated by society for hundreds of years.
I guess too, I noticed last night, just because we were so busy. I mean, we were going through the customers. We were so busy that it just kept happening over and over and over. And then I thought, like, do I not come off as believable? Do I not seem like I'm smart or that I know my menu? Or like, I start to check myself. Like, what am I doing wrong? Because I kept having to just walk away or be quiet and stop talking. And I'm just like, I don't get it. It was really frustrating.
That is really frustrating. I can't even imagine. I would be like my temper would have just given way. You were so much more patient than me.
Jump on the bar. Listen to me.
Because I have had that happen to me in other situations, particularly with men who just assume I don't know what I'm talking about. In fact, I was just remembering this story from my freshman year of college. Okay. I got a job working in the athletic department at my university. And I am one of those people who likes to be good at my job. And I was only working as a receptionist at the time, but I would often field phone calls for people who wanted to know certain questions. And we had this little booklet that the sports information director had put together that was all about all of the programs in our league. So we were an NCAA team. We were in Division I.
Okay.
And I went to this party, and this guy who had graduated from my high school. And so I already didn't like him because I don't like anybody. At the time, I was like very anti my hometown, but I had been friends with his girlfriend. And so I was there, and they started talking about the football team. And of course, not only did I work for the athletic department, but my boss had asked if I would work the games as well. So I went to every single game and worked on the booster side. So I knew all of the booster club members. I worked the games. I knew our league. I knew everything about it, right? Mm-hmm. And this boy was like, oh, we're a Division II team. And I said, no, we're a Division I team. No, we're Division II. You just don't know what you're talking about. I was like, I work in the department. I know what I'm talking about. And he was like adamant that I was wrong. And I started to just doubt myself. Like, maybe I'm wrong.
I am. Yeah.
And so
that's the part I hate is the self-doubt.
Yeah. Like maybe I read it wrong the 75 times I fucking read it in the last 3 months of my life. So I went back to work that following week and I dug out that booklet, and yeah, there we are. Division I, AA. That's what we are. So I am like ready. The next time I see this kid, I was like, I'm going to.
You got the book in your hand.
Tear him a new asshole. This is before smartphones. Oh. You know, so I couldn't like pull it up on my phone and be like, listen, motherfucker. So we had a party like a couple of months later, and I just decided I'm going to say something to him. And so I just said, hey, by the way, do you remember that argument you had with me? Yeah, we are a Division I team. I double checked it on Monday. And he was like, yeah, I know.
So was he just dicking around with you, or
no? He just couldn't admit he had been wrong, and he didn't want to apologize for arguing with me. So he just acted like he'd already known that, and I was a silly little girl for having brought it up.
Oh my gosh, I would be seething.
Oh, I was. I had to leave.
Go on road rage somewhere.
But that, like, I think that those kinds of interactions just happen for you on like a microcosm basis. Like you just have microaggressions all day long.
Mm-hmm. And it builds up, and it, like, because it was in such succession, it was noticeable. And I was just like, okay, I'm really tired of this. This is how I started feeling. So I was like, I'm just going to be in the well, I'll just make drinks. I won't talk to anybody. So that's what I ended up doing. Yeah. Because I was just tired of being not acknowledged.
Yeah. Like you're invisible.
Invisible.
You don't matter. Mm-hmm. Ugh.
Yeah.
Well, we're fixing the world one week at a time.
So who are we bringing to visibility today? Do you have a long one or a short one?
Mine's kind of medium length. I had really a lot of fun researching her, but I will tell you that I had one of those rage moments.
Oh no.
I was like researching her thing and I was like, God damn it. And I started like making noises. And whenever I do that, if my wife's in the room, she's like, what? And so I just had to finally be like, well, this woman, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, that is infuriating. I was like, thank you for validating my feelings.
I usually listen to music as I research, and so I'll like whip around in my chair and pull off my headphones, and I'll be like, this is the reason why the fucking world is terrible. It's because these fucking guys. And my husband's just like, whoa, okay.
I think I went first last time, didn't I?
Yeah.
Let's have you go first then.
Okay. I did something a little different today too. So mine is about a group of ladies.
Oh, I've thought about doing that before and I haven't yet.
Okay, so mine is about the Sapphires.
I don't know them.
The world's first indigenous all-girl singing group.
Wow, that's really cool. I'm so glad you did another Indigenous person because it is November, which is Native American Heritage Month.
Yes. So the Sapphires was a musical group made up of 4 Aboriginal women.
Oh, like in Australia?
Yes. So 2 were sisters, Laurel Robinson and Lois Peeler, and these are their married names now. I couldn't find their maiden names. The other 2 were, so Laurel and Lois were sisters, and then it was their cousins, Beverly Briggs and Naomi Mayers. And so Beverly and Naomi are sisters and cousins to Laurel and Lois. The girls were all born along the Murray River, which is Australia's longest river, and were part of the indigenous group called the Yorta Yorta people. These girls lived in very poor conditions. They had a very big extended family of brothers, sisters, cousins, aunties, and uncles who regularly sang together during the 1960s and 70s. Singing was deeply rooted in their culture, and oftentimes it was a way for them to kind of escape their living conditions, which I totally understand. I mean, music is so healing.
Well, I mean, I feel like I know a little bit about Aboriginal life in Australia, but can you give us an insight on that?
So the area that they were living in, so if you think in context of what Native Americans did and living on reservations, these were government granted pieces of lands that these Aboriginal people were granted, I guess, after their country was taken up underneath them. And they made their living by, well, I would say survival by farming in their area, but it was, I mean, they were living in shacks. They were living, if you think of like the pictures that I saw reminded me kind of like Dust Bowl era housing, wooden houses, blackboard, things like that. And a lot of just farming, raising animals. A lot of them could not find work because of it was so seeped in racism.
Yeah.
That they were just given money by the government, like little allotments every month, and that's what they lived on.
Yeah, I know that that the US government modeled our system on Australia's.
Yeah.
There's a really great movie about Aboriginal race stuff.
Is it Rabbit Wire Fence?
Rabbit Proof Fence.
Rabbit Proof Fence, yes.
That's such a good movie.
That is a fabulous movie.
My Aunt Wendy is the one who turned me on to that, and I watched it and I was just like, oh my God.
And the cinematography is
so
amazing.
Good. If you haven't watched it, guys, you should watch it.
Rabbit Proof Fence. So, like I said, they would use music to escape their living conditions, which was strained under the oppression of colonization. So Laurel said that her grandmother would teach them songs and sing on the porch with them as children. The girls' families had been affected by have you heard of the stolen generations?
Yeah, wasn't that the basis for our boarding school?
Boarding schools, yeah.
Yeah.
So there was some interracial relationships where some would come out a little bit more fair than the others. The government would literally take those children because they were like, you pass as white. But you're not white, so you belong in this boarding school. And they would take other Aboriginal children and be like, we're going to civilize you. And they would pull and rip families apart. Yeah. Like parents would never see their children again. That's why they call it the stolen generation.
And that was what the boarding schools here were like too.
Yep. Erase their identity, basically. And there was also a policy that was going on in Australia at the moment called White Australia. And it's a policy that was created to protect prohibit other ethnicities from immigrating to Australia for the purpose of work, trade, or labor. So it was a policy basically giving white people preference to move in and work and live and making everybody else secondary.
And that's kind of what our current immigration system is heading towards too.
There was literally they created a seal. It's like an outline of Australia, and it just says, white Australia, keep Australia for the Australians. That's what it said on there.
Also, can we talk about how Australia was originally Aboriginal? So fuck right off.
Yeah. So the girls spent a lot of time learning to harmonize with each other. I guess country music was a big deal over there. at the
They
time.
are like cowboys.
Yeah, and like so they listened to a lot of like honky tonk, and yeah, so they said most children like hated it, but they relented, and like as they got older, it became something that they looked fondly on. So I don't know. It's like, have you ever had a musical era where you're like, I hate that music, but then you find yourself singing it in the shower?
Yeah, that's a 90s pop. I'm like, I love Britney Spears now, but at the time I was like, oh my God, that is the worst. Why do you even like? Which I think was my own internalized misogyny. I didn't like her because she was pretty and successful and whatever.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Glass door open. Mine was Boys to Men. I was like, I don't like that stuff. They just want girls. And then I was like, I'm one of those girls.
Oh, I love
like
Boys to Men. Yeah, I was a big fan. But I totally was like, no, I'm too cool for that. I like listen to grunge music.
So the girls actually began listening to Elvis, and they were drawn by the singing styles of doo-wop and soul, and they were in love with the African American group, the Shirelles. Do you remember them?
No.
Mama said there'll be days like this.
There'll be days.
like
Okay.
this, Mama said. So they were in love with stuff like that, especially because there was 4 of them, and they could harmonize, they could sing and dance. So at first they were just performing for family, and they actually were just singing outside the back of the family truck, which I think is adorable because they're like, this is our stage. But it soon turned into more. They made a makeshift stage and began entertaining their friends in the Yorta Yorta community. And they actually started adding to their shows. They would break from the singing, and they would do comic sketches.
Oh, I love that.
They started dressing up in costumes that were created and sewn by their mothers and their grandmother. And they decided they wanted to tap dance. So they nailed pennies to the bottom of their shoes and made tap shoes for themselves.
That's industrious.
So as they moved on to their mid-teen years, they started performing for small donations, which was money that their family desperately needed. Like I said, the racism held the family from being able to find steady work. And they were left relying on those small endowments. And so this right here was like, hey, we can get some money from this. So this is something Laurel said. I couldn't get work in anywhere. I tried everywhere. I put it straight down to racism. They took one look at you and would say no, but I knew there were jobs around. I could see them advertised. So it's basically she would walk in and be like, you're hiring for a waitress. And they're like, no, we're not.
Ugh.
Yeah.
That's exactly what Elizabeth Parachovich was talking about in Alaska.
Yep. So that's not the only racism they had to endure. A couple times while they were performing, people would stand up and leave because they didn't want to watch them perform just because they were people of color. And one person one time yelled out, but she's black. And she got, I believe it was Beverly, she got so upset she couldn't perform.
I mean, the ignorance it takes to not understand also just the difference among races. Like,
face value.
Yeah, I had a student do that actually the other day.
Really?
Yeah, I had asked him, he was a white student, and he, his foster brother was Marshallese from Marshall Islands.
Okay.
And I had asked him like, oh, how are things going? The day that the one boy had dressed up the other boy into like makeup and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Which was really cute and fun and supportive and sweet.
Yeah.
And I said, how did that go? And this boy was like, oh, it went all right. Like he got harassed a little bit. And I was like, yeah, I assumed that he would get harassed. I said that I worried that it would compound the harassment because he was not white.
Yeah.
And the kid said something like, oh yeah, I know it was worse because he's black. And I said,
well,
isn't he Marshallese? He's like, oh yeah, same thing. And I was like,
no, drastically different.
No.
And also don't dismiss calling somebody what they are, don't dismiss who they are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like it's a totally different culture. And also like you knew he wasn't.
Yeah. And don't dismiss it. Just admit, oh yeah, you're right.
Well,
and change it.
It was just a strange little moment where I was like, I didn't know that was a thing that people did. But that is the second time we've had that happen in our stories too. Remember?
Yeah.
The Fabulous Moolah used to wrestle with that really dark-skinned Mexican fellow.
Yeah, and it turned out he was...
No, he was Mexican.
He was Mexican. But, but they made him...
They thought he was black, and so they tried to like ban him from places.
Yeah.
It was like,
no.
Come on, you guys. I mean, obviously ignorance is ignorance is ignorance.
Yeah. So they figured their best chances were to be successful is to move to the big city. And for them, it was Melbourne, Australia. There was more job prospects there. And actually a lot of Aboriginals who had been pushed to the outskirts were now beginning to move back into the cities.
Mm.
People were protesting at the time. I mean, it's around this time, it's 1965, 1967, and the cultural landscape is definitely changing. People were protesting. They were campaigning for independence, equality for women in the workplace, fair wages, a free, accessible system of education. And the biggest one was the recognition of the struggle for the rights for Indigenous Australians. Like it all came to a head at that moment. It's like, this is out and out race, like blatant racism and against human rights. So in the bigger city, the girls were able to find jobs. They did not tell their parents that they were going to continue looking for gigs. Oh. They were like, we're just going to go work, because they ended up playing in taverns. They were playing cabarets. They were playing in
maybe some unsavory locations.
And so they're like, we're just not going to tell mom and dad. Yeah, they played in some army barracks too, and at universities, which I'm imagining probably a little rougher crowds.
I feel like the universities would be okay, but the army barracks, I'm like, ooh, okay.
A few times to get jobs, they had to pretend that they were different races. So they would say that they were Tahitian, or they said that they were Maori to be able to get work.
Huh.
Yeah. They kept, like
were those seen as like,
they were
somehow
seen
better?
As somehow better. Yeah.
How bizarre.
Because
this is why racism is
such
a weird construct.
Yeah.
Like, wait a minute, you're telling me that like Maori people are the Aboriginal, the indigenous folks of New Zealand. Like, like what?
I don't understand.
It just is so confusing to me.
Yes. So while in Melbourne, they did get their big break. So this is a quote from Beverly. She said, I was 19. It all started one night when we were coming home from a late shift at the Postmaster General. We got off the train at 11 p.m. We were going past the nightclub when these young Maori gentlemen out front said, hello, girls, come on in, come see the show. They said they were looking for girls to do hula in their show, which had kind of a South Pacific flavor. So the next day we ended up performing with them, and they asked, can you sing? And they said, we can harmonize. And that's how it started. The guys were blown away by the girls' voices, and they were now going to be paid professional singers.
That's cool.
Yeah, because they were just like, these girls actually too were very beautiful. And so I can imagine they're like, hey, want a hula dance? And then they could actually sing. So after performing with this group for a while, the girls were scouted and spotted and asked to audition for a chance to be part of a lineup of performers who were going to perform for the troops in Vietnam. So no other group from Australia had been asked to represent Australia in any kind of way like this. No other women had, and especially no other Indigenous people.
Huh.
So not all the girls felt good about doing this.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. I could imagine that you'd have some
reservations.
Yeah, you'd be like, wait, I'm going to go on behalf of a country that hates me. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool.
So Beverly and Naomi were opposed to the war, and they were opposed to that concept. So they ended up not going in protest. Laurel and Lois ended up going, and they were the only two that traveled to Vietnam. At this same time, as soon as the girls left, the Aboriginal people of Australia won their right to vote. This was 1967.
Oh my God, just the fact that
they couldn't even vote.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm siding with the girls who decided to stay. I would have been like, hell no, am I going to go represent a country that has spent the last, however many 100 years trying to destroy me. Ugh.
Yep.
Gross.
1967, the right to vote.
I can't even believe it. I mean, I can believe it, unfortunately, but I wish that were different.
So I'm going to play a little clip for you this is from Laurel, of what it was like when they arrived to Vietnam.
But as soon as we got into Vietnam, to Saigon, our jaws dropped. Then we saw jets flying over, firing. I said, what that looks like it's on fire or something. They're burning off. And it was napalm being dropped.
Yeah, so they get to Vietnam and they're seeing napalm being dropped.
Oh my God.
And they
just
had
how
no
devastating.
idea. They had never even heard of what napalm existed.
Ugh. What they saw must have been just awful.
So while they were touring in Vietnam, yes, the things that they saw what the soldiers were enduring, it's like going from their own oppression to seeing this, like totally, it blew their minds away. So upon returning home, the impression of war left a really hard mark on them.
Yeah.
Laurel decided to move to England. She lived there for 3 years, and she went to America for 2 years, and she got an education in medical service. She was just inspired by seeing the warfare, and she ended up returning to Australia. She felt it was her calling, that she had to go back home, and she couldn't work anywhere else, is what she said. So Beverly decided to follow suit, and she started as an evening volunteer and liked it so much that she made it her full-time job. Naomi also started in the medical field as well, and she began with nursing and has worked her way up to administrator, and now she is the CEO of Aboriginal Health Services.
Oh.
Lois still stood passionately with her stance against the war. She actually became a political activist and then a teacher. And she is now the principal of Australia's only all Aboriginal girls' school.
Oh, that's really cool.
She also
Personally, that's my favorite.
She also works for Indigenous Affairs and currently chairs in the Regional Aboriginal Justice Advisory Committee. And so the women basically, this experience
like tore them apart,
but helped them realize that what their true job was, what was supposed to happen was they were supposed to go back home and help the people back home, which I love that full circle thing.
Yeah.
In 2002, Laurel's son, named Tony Briggs, he's an actor, singer, producer. He ended up writing a play called The Sapphires, based on his mother's life and family history. It's telling the story of the 4 Aboriginal girls who struggled past racism and poverty and became adored performers on stage. His play actually won the Australian Helpman Award, which is reserved to recognize distinguished accomplishments by Australian artists in the Australian arts. The play was actually picked up and adapted into a movie in 2012.
Oh.
It debuted and received a 10-minute standing ovation at the Cannes Film Festival. The movie is also called The Sapphires, and it was one of the highest grossing films ever in Australian history. All 4 of the original Sapphires were in attendance at the premieres, which they said personally sparked a huge what from their friends and stuff. They were like, you guys were singers?
Wait, this is you?
Yeah. And so they were like, oh yeah, it's something we did,
I always find that so fascinating when people are like, oh, yeah, I did that.
And I did watch the movie. It is on Netflix right now.
Ooh, I want to watch it.
It is, of course it is adapted, so not all of the storyline is completely true, but it's pretty on point. And it's funny, and the music is great. It also stars 4 Aboriginal actresses, which is awesome.
Yeah.
One of them is a fantastic singer. I think she was like an American Idol winner. Or I think it was Australian Idol. Yeah. It's really fun. And it does a good job of showing what the girls went through. So I got my information from National Film and Sound Archive of Australia, moviemom.com, Wikipedia, AustralianGeographic.com, Daily Mail, and that clip you heard is from YouTube.
And I liked on the clip that you could actually hear them singing a little bit, but there were only 3 of them. Is one of them passed away?
One of them was not available for that interview.
Oh, I see. But they're all 4 still alive.
Yes.
I'd like to hear more of their music. I think that would be cool.
One of the things I did in my research, they said, I think it was Laurel said, they barely even took pictures of themselves because they're like, we didn't have a camera. We were just poor and doing our thing. There's a few photos of them, but recordings of their music when they were younger non-existent.
Huh.
But there is that small clip of them right there.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, I liked the story of the Sapphires. Yeah,
I did too.
and I had no idea.
I had no idea, and I'm really excited to watch that movie.
Alrighty, who did you bring?
All right. Are you ready for this one?
I'm ready.
Marie Tharp.
It sounds familiar. I don't think I know her. No, no, don't even pretend, Rita.
She was an American geologist and cartographer who created the first scientific map of the ocean.
What?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
I know. And we almost are birthday twins. She was born, Marie Tharp was born in Ypsilanti, Michigan on July 30th. I'm July 31st, 1920, to parents Bertha and William Tharp. Her mother was a German and Latin teacher, and her father worked for the United States Department of Agriculture.
Wow.
William, Marie's father, was a scientist who studied soil, rocks, and surveyed land. And the nature of his work meant that the family moved around a lot. They often spent their summers in the North or the Midwest and the winters in the South. And Marie often helped her father collect soil samples and map the land, which really sparked her interest in science at a really young age. But because their family was always moving around, Marie didn't have a lot of roots. She ended up attending 20 schools during her young adult years.
Wow. That's a lot of moving around.
I know, when you think about, that's almost 2 a year.
Yeah.
Her father finally decided to retire, and they bought a farm in Bellefontaine, Ohio. So she was about, I think, 15 or 16 when they decided to buy the farm. So her last year of school, she was settled. Mm-hmm. Her mother died in 1936 when she was 16. And so after she graduated from high school, she decided to stick around for a year and help out at the farm. She didn't want to leave her dad alone. Mm-hmm. Marie really wanted to study literature at St. John's College in Annapolis, Maryland, but women weren't allowed to attend the school at the time. So Marie set her sights on Ohio University. While science was something she was really, really interested in, women were discouraged from trying to study or work in a scientific field at the time.
Because they knew we'd do a better job.
In fact, the only careers that were really open to women at the time were secretary, bookkeeper, nurse, teacher, or librarian. Okay. Her father was like, you need to choose something that you love, but that you're also going to be able to have a career in.
That's logical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Marie decided when she went to college, she was going to try a lot of things. She changed her major 4 or 5 times. And by the time she graduated in 1943, she had a dual major in English and music and 4 different minors.
Whoa, that's keeping it open. Yikes.
As she was leaving college, the U.S. was fully engulfed in World War II. Because many of the men were gone, as we've heard before, that left openings for women in fields that had been primarily male-dominated. And she had taken a geology class at Ohio University, so she became recruited for this petroleum geology program at the University of Michigan. And it was actually an accelerated master's program. And she completed it in a year and became one of the first petroleum geology girls in 1944.
Well, that sounds kind of weird.
I don't even know why they called them that, but they did. This was actually a fairly remarkable achievement in and of itself, because between 1920 and 1970, 50 years, fewer than 4% of all earth sciences degrees were completed by women.
Whoa. That's a lot.
Right?
Dominant, yeah.
96% men.
Yeah.
She was recruited to work in the petroleum industry and took a job at Standard Oil and Gas in Tulsa, Oklahoma. However, she wasn't terribly excited by the work she was doing, so she decided to get another degree.
Oh, geez.
This time, she graduated from the University of Tulsa with a bachelor's in mathematics in 1948. So she now has 2 bachelor's degrees, 4 minors, and a master's.
Wow.
Yeah. And she is 22.
Jeez. Okay. That puts it in perspective.
While working on her math degree, she was working as a geologist for the Staniland Oil Company. It seems as though working in her field for a for-profit corporation wasn't really what she wanted to do.
I was going to say, yeah.
Based on how much she liked school, it seems to me that what she really wanted to do was study.
Mm-hmm.
So that's exactly what she did.
It's called Research Grant.
In 1948, she moved to New York City to work at Columbia University's Lamont Geological Observatory. And there she was encouraged to learn how to draft maps. They were like, we're still not going to give you a job in this, but we will let you draw things because girls are good at drawing.
Okay.
And so she had originally not been interested in drafting at all, but she had a colleague tell her that's the only way you're going to get a job. You've got to learn how to draft. Mm-hmm. So she had some pretty rudimentary drafting skills. It wasn't her like top skill, but that was what she was allowed to do in science. So she was hired. She met a man at Columbia named Bruce Heezen. He was a geology student at the time, and they would go on to collaborate together on projects for 30 years.
Wow.
Although it wasn't always a tight collaboration. Her first project was working with him on locating downed aircraft in the ocean after World War II. But as the 40s turned into the 50s, the Cold War between the U.S. and the Soviet Union became the primary focus of everything. Mm-hmm. And the U.S. Navy was interested in having some kind of map of the seafloor, which they thought would be helpful in their future submarine battles. Because that's how they thought they were going to fight the Cold War.
Okay. Thought?
Which was kind of true.
Yeah.
Up until this time, most people believed the ocean floor was a flat, featureless plain of mud. And Tharp and Heezen set out to figure out whether or not this was true and to make a comprehensive map of the ocean to better understand the Earth. So the most advanced technology at the time was sonar, which was a sound-based technology. Most of us know a little bit about sonar. Mm-hmm. But I actually found an essay from 1999 written by Marie about how it worked. So I want to use her words.
Okay.
A sound signal, usually an electronic ping, would be sent out at a regular interval, and a microphone inside the hull of the ship would pick up the echo. As a ping was sent out, a stylus would be set in motion on a strip of paper. When the echo returned, the stylus would mark the paper by burning it with an electric spark. The result was an uninterrupted series of seafloor depths along the ship's course. Relatively uninterrupted, that is. The echo sounder depended on the ship's electrical power, which went off whenever someone opened up the ship's refrigerator.
Oh, no.
When that happened, no echo returned, and what the sound recorded was the depths of the crew's appetite.
She's funny.
Yeah. Here's the kicker. Marie wasn't allowed on the boat.
Okay.
Do you remember when I talked about Jeanne Beret?
Yes.
The first woman to circumnavigate the globe?
Did she disguise herself?
No, she just didn't get to fucking go.
Oh, shit.
But Jeanne Beret circumnavigated the globe in like the late 1800s.
Yeah.
This is the mid-20th century.
Jeez.
And Marie Tharp is not allowed to be on the ship because there was a policy that women weren't allowed because they were, quote, bad luck at sea.
You know what? That is bullshit. They fucking make that shit up so that they can have their way and that we don't get to go and they get to wave at us and go, nah, 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 you can't go.
Yeah, it was real shit. I was like, these are scientists? And their logic is women are bad luck at sea.
Oh my God.
So instead, Marie is back in the lab at the university and she's receiving all of the data from the ship. And then she was taking that data and using just pens, ink, and rulers, she started to draw the details of the ocean floor. Longitude and latitude, degree by degree.
Ooh, geesh.
Yeah, she was like, it's painstaking. It was tedious and meticulous, and she fucking killed that shit.
Nice.
Based on the data she received, Marie created a map of the Atlantic Ocean that contained canyons, ridges, mountains, and an entire mountain range along the continents.
Wow.
As she started studying this, what she started discovering was that perhaps a theory that had been widely dismissed by the scientific community might actually be true. In 1915, nearly 40 years before Marie was creating her maps, there was a meteorologist named Alfred Wegener who had proposed the concept of a continental drift theory. This was the theory that the continents had once fit together like a giant puzzle piece and something had caused them to drift and come apart. Now, this theory was widely considered to be completely shit. So as Marie is drawing out her maps, she's discovering that there is a continuous crack along the length of the Atlantic Ocean, and she started to believe that this was proof that the continents had spread apart. So I want to play a little clip for you that's a really great and concise summary of what it was that Marie was seeing, and I highly recommend our listeners go and watch it. It's very short, only like 2.5 minutes long or 3 minutes long, and it's an animated video, so you really get to see sort of in a drawing way how this worked.
Her profiles reveal the existence of a complex geography of crevices and valleys. But perhaps most startling was the emergence of a long V-shaped cleft that ran through each of her profiles. These so-called rift valleys offered support for Wengener's continental drift theory. If two landmasses were moving apart, they'd split the ocean floor in two, tearing a scar in the landscape and forming a valley below. Was this evidence for the controversial theory?
I am curious why the theory was controversial.
They believed that there was no evidence to support it and that it was preposterous.
Okay.
And this was, again, the entire scientific community was like, this Alfred Wegener guy is an idiot.
Okay.
So she's like, I think I found proof that this is true. As she drew her maps, she's really becoming more and more convinced that this continental drift theory is real. So she approaches Bruce, Heezen, her partner, and she's like, here's my maps. What do you see? And he was like, oh, it cannot be. This looks too much like continental drift. And he said her interpretation of the data was, quote, girl talk.
Holy shit. Was that the part that just fucking enraged you? Whoa.
He dismissed her as it's girl talk.
What the fuck does that mean?
It's frivolous and meaningless, I guess.
Oh my God. Okay.
And also, I don't know about you, but my girl talk never consisted of continental drift theory.
You remember that first slumber party where we talked about continental drift?
Yeah. And Pangea.
Oh no, my real laugh is out there now.
So he said, you need to start over. So she had to redo all of her charts and all of her maps. And so she set out from sketch one again of mapping the ocean floor. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. The whole thing.
Wow.
Like, he's just out there collecting the data on a ship. He's not actually doing anything with it. She's drawing his fucking maps.
If she's drawing it and he's doubtful, why doesn't he fucking draw it?
Right? Instead of having her redo her work.
Exactly.
At the same time as she's redoing her drawings, there is a graduate student working in the lab named Howard Foster, and he was mapping earthquake epicenters in the Atlantic Ocean and the same region that she's working on. So when Marie is looking at his drawings of the earthquake epicenters, she notices that they are in the same places that she's finding the ridges. In fact, if you overlaid his map on top of hers, they were nearly identical.
Wow.
So Marie set out to create an even more detailed map, and she used a method called physiography that it almost makes it into 3D of the ocean floor. And with these two data sets, they show it to Bruce, and he's like, fuck, I guess it's true. So he's convinced that this has merit. So in 1957, the first physiographic map of the North Atlantic Ocean was published. And Heezen went on to publish major papers on plate tectonics, this theory. Even though Marie was the one who proved the theory and created the maps, Bruce was the one who took all of the credit.
Oh, that was like Mary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Marie's name didn't appear on any of her major work, which just got my blood boiling.
How is that okay. Continue.
Marie's work on proving the theory of continental drift fundamentally changed the course of science forever. Scientists worked throughout the 1960s on the theory of what is now known as plate tectonics and serves as the foundation of our understanding of the oceans and the history of our world.
I've learned that in school, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it was because of Marie Tharp.
Wow.
And in the early 1960s, Marie went on to map the South Atlantic and the Indian Oceans. She continued to work at Columbia, drawing maps of topography. She discovered the faults cutting through mountain ranges along the coasts. And so she's just doing her work, figuring it out. And after her research partner, Bruce Heason, dies in 1977, she published a comprehensive map of the entire world's oceans.
Whoa.
She called it the World Ocean Floor Map, and there's a picture of it online, and as soon as I saw it, I gasped. Because I have seen that exact map
in your books.
In my elementary classroom. The one where you could go up and touch it and you could feel the ridges in the ocean. Mm-hmm. That was her.
Whoa.
Like the logo, I even recognized the logo. It just blew my mind.
Yeah.
Marie Tharp retired in 1983, my birth year. And so we're just twins, obviously. And she opened up her own map distribution business.
People need maps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she was just doing that for fun. In 1995, she donated her map collection and her notes to the Library of Congress's Map and Geography Division.
That means you can go see it.
That's awesome. It wasn't until 1997, 40 years after she proved the theory of continental drift, that she was finally recognized for her contributions to science.
Was she alive?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
That year, she was honored by the Library of Congress's Phillips Society as one of the 20th century's outstanding cartographers, and her work was included in an exhibit in the 100th anniversary celebration. Her maps were displayed alongside the journals of Lewis and Clark.
Wow.
She was also given an Outstanding Achievement Award from the Society of Women Geographers. However, I personally would have been like, it's about fucking time, y'all.
40 years? Yeah.
Yeah. But she was not caught up in pointing out their egregious error and overlooking her significant achievements. Instead, she had always believed her maps would eventually do the talking for her. In 1999, she wrote this: "There's truth to the old cliche that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and that seeing is believing." Marie Tharp died on August 23rd, 2006, after a battle with cancer. She was 86 years old.
Ooh. A long life.
It is, and she did she created like one of the biggest achievements in science.
Yeah,
of all time.
Oh, jeez. And we don't know her name.
Yeah, and like the fact that I know who Lewis and Clark is, and she's apparently considered, good enough that she was in the museum next to them, but yet we don't know her name in the science books that we read.
No.
And that just is irritating to me.
Yeah, well, the dismissiveness of it. And also, I just hate that repeating story that we keep seeing of these women, like with Mary Anning, like I was saying, with her finds. They doubt them at first, and then once it's right, then they're like, okay, and then they put their name on it, and then they
take all the credit. John Burry had the same thing. The whole reason she did all of the work on that expedition. Her partner was like, had goiters like me. I was like unable to climb the fucking mountains, and she did all of the collecting of data. Yep. And she did the interpretation of the data and discovered species that had never been written about before. So here we have, same thing.
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating, which is why we're out doing the thing we're doing.
Exactly.
I will say that I had some excellent resources for this one.
Nice.
And I barely touched the surface, I felt. I used the biography that was on the Mariners Museum and Park. There was an article on Forbes magazine titled "Marie Tharp, the Woman Who Discovered the Backbone of Earth" by David Bresson. There was a GIS Lounge article titled "Marie Tharp and Mapping the Ocean Floor" by Rebecca Maxwell. There was a Smithsonian Magazine article called "Seeing is Believing: How Marie Tharp Changed Geology Forever" by Aaron Blackmore. And the Smithsonian has an ocean website, and on there was an article by Danielle Hall called "Making a Mark on the Ocean Floor." And I, of course, couldn't resist reading her own work, her own ideas. So Marie Tharp wrote an essay about what she had done. Found it on the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute website. Oh my God, I cannot say that word today. But her actual essay is called "Connect the Dots: Mapping the Seafloor and Discovering the Mid-Ocean Ridge." And then the video I grabbed is by the National Geographic, and it's called How One Brilliant Woman Mapped the Secrets of the Ocean Floor.
What a great title for that essay, Connect the Dots. It's quite clever. Yeah.
And I used a video on the New York Times and Wikipedia.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I love that story.
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
Well, I hope everybody enjoyed our 2 stories today. I sure did.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah. And I liked the contrasting things we had going on too.
I know.
Entertainment versus science.
Which is funny that you said it took 40 years for her recognition. It was 40 years until Laurel's son made the movie.
Documentary.
Yeah. So they were like, it was like 40 years in between, like where people didn't know that they had even done anything.
At least they got their due someday, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And luckily in the cases of both of ours, they were alive
to see it.
It, which I think is at least something that we recognized it before they were gone. Well, everybody, thank you for listening this week. I hope you're enjoying our stories. Remember, if you've got any suggestions for us, you can always email us at idon'tknowherpodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to leave out that apostrophe because it doesn't work in an email address. And we are also on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can find us at IDKHerPodcast.
I'd like to thank our editor, Lucas McIntyre.
And Jennifer Finch from L7 for our lovely theme music that always, every time it starts, makes me a little more invigorated.
All right. Well, till next time, guys. Thanks for listening. Are you going to burp?
They're not even real burps. They're gurgles. Okay. That's what I call them, gurgles.
Gurgles.
Okay, there you go.
I kind of feel like I have to burp too. It will come out. Oh, it's stuck.
Okay.
Okay.